What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today, well, I kind of want to check this one out, and this was kind of a late entry because I only just heard about this band. The night I'm recording this is November 29th. I heard about this band yesterday, so I am talking about the latest offering from Bedsore, Dream the Strife for Love. This also came out on November 29th on 20 Buck Spin, which, of course, 20 Buck Spin hardly, if at all, ever misses. And, well, this is a band that I've heard some hype around, and this is their second studio full-length overall. This is a band from Italy, and I saw on the Metal Archives, they're described as progressive death metal, and I would say that's accurate for the most part, but I would also like to say there's also a lot of avant-garde metal going on here, because I'll just go ahead and say it. I think in terms of perhaps the weirdest album of the year, I think this has a good shot at being the strangest and weirdest album of 2024. And we kick things off with Minerva's Obelisk, which is largely an instrumental track. Starts off with kind of like, dare I say, like 70s psychedelic ambience, and then the guitars kind of slowly come in. And this is one of the cool things about the album as a whole. Like, whenever it gets into these like ambient sections, the guitars kind of fade in and then they come in full sway. And it really does showcase itself quite well here on this opening track. And then there's even like more like 70s hard rock inspired moments, like especially on the organ and the keyboards. Definitely kind of reminded me a little bit of like a hybrid between like Per Weidberg, Opeth, and 70s Deep Purple. Kind of like a mix of both of those. But dare I say, the song almost feels like an improvisational jam session a little bit, because it's just kind of going all over the place. Even some like eerie clean guitars to help add some atmosphere. And it actually does get really, really pretty. Now, the reason why I say you could maybe call it an instrumental or not, there are some like wailing female vocals that come up on here, but there's no lyrics. It's just kind of like wails to kind of add a little bit more melody. And then I would say from top to bottom on this entire album, it gets really jazz inspired, almost like Cynic a little bit, like Focus, Traced in Air, like those eras of Cynic where it gets into the more kind of jazz fusion inspired sections. And then again, the album as a whole almost feels like a big film score to a certain degree. Then we get into Scars of Light, which starts off with keyboards and really cool drums, and then the vocals come in and they immediately remind me of bands like Horrendous, Morbus Chron, maybe even a little bit of At the Gates, perhaps. Like, it has that like almost punky Thomas Lindbergh kind of feel to him. But what I really like on this track was there's some cool like atmospheric melodies going on, classic metal riffs that pop up on here that kind of made me think of Judas Priest, even some Iron Maiden gallops that were definitely feels like something you would hear from the 80s Maiden catalog, even some like really cool triplet swings, more of those like Cynic-esque mood shifts where it gets into the jazz fusion sections. Now, one thing that doesn't come up a whole lot on this album when it comes to the drums is blast beats, but you do get a decent amount on Scars of Light, as well as the following track, A Colossus, An Elephant, a Winged Horse, The Dragon, Rendevious, as well as the, if I can find it here, the closer, Fountain of Venus. Like, there are some blast beats on there, but they're, like, very brief and not really the focal point of the rhythm section on this album. But also what I found really cool about Scars of Light, the lead melody towards the end, dare I say, reminds me of something Jeff Waters would have done back in the late 80s for Annihilator. Like, it kind of reminded me of Alice in Hell a little bit. Now, with A Colossus, An Elephant, a Winged Horse, The Dragon, Rendevious, or Desvious. I had it right the first time and then I fucked it up. it's a little more creepy. Like the ambience that starts off this track, and it's also the longest track of the album, like over 11 minutes long. And it starts off, like I said, with like creepy ambience. There's some sci-fi synths. Then again, sci-fi synths do kind of get peppered in every once in a while on this album. And then some more like gorgeous guitar melodies. Now, I will say, there's not like many true blues solos, except I would say Fanfare for a Heartfelt Love and Fountain of Venus. Those songs have true blues solos, whereas for the most part, it's mostly lead melodies, would be the best way to describe a lot of guitars on here. But also with Colossus, some atonal riffs and a thrash beat that kind of feel a little like Voivod, a little bit like, say, like late 80s to like modern day Voivod. But what I really like, and then another thing that comes up on here too, trombone, trumpet, saxophone, and flute. And they're pretty much all over this album, but what really stands out with the saxophone is that there's a part here on Colossus where the guitar and saxophone work together in tandem, and it sounds tastefully done and well balanced. Of course, there's even a like cool Opeth groove, but then it does get really quirky. Then again, this whole album's quirky, but there is a soft moment that's like really beautiful, and then there's a section where you get some intense blast beats, organ, and tremolo riffs. Acoustic guitars even come up, as well as 12-string guitars. And then we get into Realm of Relayed, whatever that word is. Dare I say, the keyboards that start this song off reminds me of going to a baseball game, but there's also a bit of a circus feel, especially with the rhythms that are starting to come along. And then it turns quiet before it suddenly gets into thrash metal a little bit. And then you get a really cool shredding solo. So this is the one lead on the album where it's a little more shred-tastic rather than melodic or feeling or atmospheric. And then, of course, it gets really kind of dreamy. Like the transitions on this track start to feel a little whimsical, and there's like little moments with the synths where it sounds like you're in a dreamscape. And then, of course, there's like somewhat Middle Eastern inspired acoustic guitars towards the end, as well as like wailing vocals. Fanfare for a Heartfelt Love, which is the shortest track of the album at over 3 minutes. This is almost like horror movie music, like horror organs and ambience, triplet swing with some cool melodies. The saxophone comes out again, as well as a melodic solo. And then Fountain of Venus has moments where it sounds a little more somber and sorrowful a little bit with the keyboards and the guitar melodies, and those moments get peppered throughout. And then, of course, it gets really doomy, and hell, even some of the synth parts that pop up here kind of remind me of like video game music, like almost like 8-bit video games. Riff-wise, there's more of the classic metal influence coming out, blast beats, even some dissonant melodies to, again, kind of feel a bit like Voivod. Now, I gotta say, one of the big MVPs of this album is the bass. Bass grooves, bass melodies, bass flourishes, all throughout the album. And I mean all throughout the album. And so it definitely helps kind of bring everything together. Just when songs start to kind of sound like they're going off the rails a little too much, the bass kind of unites everything into one. As far as any complaints go, I will say this album does get very busy at times. It's very transition happy, and there are times on the album, I should say, where the transitions kind of feel a little bit jarring at times. But then again, when it comes to like avant-garde stuff, it's not all, depending on the band, it's not always smooth. There are going to be some bands that kind of go from one section to another, and it doesn't feel like a natural progression at times. But with that being said, with how quirky this is, it does give the album a little bit of that like extra charm to it, if that makes any sense. Production-wise, I do wish the guitar tone could have been a little bit bigger on the album to kind of help accentuate some of the heavier moments that pop up on here. But overall, I still thought this was some really damn good stuff, even if it's very unwieldy and very strange. I'm going to give this 4 out of 5. I thought this was a great album, and Bedsore, depending on where they go from here, they may be a band to watch in the world of extreme prog metal. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.